Welcome back, everybody, to Empower Gov, future-proofing public service, sponsored by Verizon, Google Pixel. If you missed the first half of the program, I'm George Jackson, executive producer, GovExec TV, and I have the pleasure of being your MC for the rest of today's program. What a great group of panelists before Balaji, Stephen, Glenn, Susan. We're going to get Jason back up here for another round. But later in the program, we have speakers from Department of State, Department of Homeland Security, and the state of Connecticut. So a lot of exciting stuff to come. First, I have the pleasure of moderating this next conversation titled Revolutionizing Connectivity, Unleashing the Potential of Mobile. My guests, come on up, gentlemen. Jason Collishaw, he's head of Enterprise and Government Sales, Devices, and Services at Google. He'll look familiar there. And then Brian Shromsky is Associate Director, 5G Public Sector at Verizon. Gentlemen, welcome. So kick things off for me, Jason. Who are you? What do you do?
All right. So, I lead our Google hardware team's enterprise sales engagements. So we work with our largest, most strategic enterprise on the commercial as well as the public sector segment. Our team works cross-functionally within Google with our Android counterparts. So, for our team, we work really collaboratively with our end customers. There's a few of them in this room today. And for us, making sure that we pull in the entire equation, because, for us, hardware is only one piece of the equation. The other part is the platform, which in this case is Android for us, and making sure that we pull all those parties together and that our team is the quarterback, I'll say, to working with our end customers to making sure that we work through those challenges. Some of what was mentioned on the previous panel, whether that's security, whether that's privacy, how you protect mobile users' data. So that's essentially what we do.
What do you bring to that equation there, sir?
Thanks again for the opportunity to speak to this great group of this morning here. Apologize if my voice is a little down here. Kentucky choked last night at the last second, and my daughter's lacrosse team lost 10 seconds after the game last night. So 2 gut punches last night. But my name is Brian Shromsky. I lead the solution architect or sales engineering team here at Verizon. My main focus is on the federal government. I just celebrated my 24th year working at Verizon and mobility. So I've seen a lot. I've seen where we've grown from 2G, 3G, 4G, and now to 5G networks here. Tells me I'm getting old. I was the youngest one there doing it at the time. But more importantly, I think this is a very interesting time. And, Android's been around for quite a while. In some aspects that I jokingly, for some of the colleagues, been out there. I think what Google has done is really taken from a mobile front and having a consistent experience among manufacturers and carriers, I think is, revolutionary. And I also think that what Google's doing on the Pixel lineup in particular and where they're going to compete and doing events like this and actually, branding and getting out there and working with the federal agencies out there as well as SLED, I think is commendable. So we're very excited about participating in this event here. Any chance we talked about mobility, it's what I love, what I really enjoy what we do here working with the public sector. I think one of the things here, as I talk to my enterprise counterparts at Verizon, I think what gets lost in the federal sector here is we have every vertical you can think of, right? So, we have the world's largest healthcare system with the Veterans Administration. I took Amtrak down here. That's a federal account for us. We have rail. You look at, obviously, from a law enforcement, public safety standpoint, U.S. Forest Service, USDA, healthcare, financial, right, from regulations, GSA to the Federal Reserve Bank. So we have everything you could possibly think about in the federal government. And if you look at military installations or large federal campuses, environments, we have small cities in a lot of cases, right? So, we have everything you can imagine in terms of vertical here at the federal government level. And, the ability to actually ingest mobility even more and have, continue that digital transformation is really exciting.
Jason, Google has been a household name worldwide for a long time. I mean, it's even like a verb,
small
Yeah. But it's becoming more recognized in the public sector specifically. And I'd like to focus for our conversation a bit right now on artificial intelligence. Like, what for government specifically does Google want to do relative to AI?
Yeah, I think from a Google, there's multiple discussions there, right? There's the AI in the context of what we're doing with cloud and the work that's being done there. And I would think we really believe in responsible AI, and that's something that's super important. That's kind of the underpinning of what we're doing in that space. But I think from a hardware point of view, we see AI, well, really honestly, we've had AI in our products for years now. Whether that was editing a photo, whether that was having things done in the background for you to say, hey, you have an upcoming meeting happening, analyzing what's happening in your personal, mail. AI has been entrenched in our DNA for quite a while. I think when we made an investment, though, into our own custom silicon, which is our Tensor product, we made that an AI-first investment, and we really wanted to put that, rather than focusing on speeds and feeds, which a lot of the OEMs in the marketplace do today, we focus very heavily on developing a custom silicon and a chipset that was AI first. And in the government space, what we found is that, and I alluded to this earlier, they don't want everything going up to a cloud, right? And in some cases, not an enterprise cloud. They're okay with an enterprise cloud because that's obviously makes a lot of sense. But in the context of a consumer cloud, and a lot of the great experiences that you find on mobile devices today, whether that's speech to text, or whether that's a transcribe app, or whether that's a language translation app, all of that stuff today, for many of the other OEMs, goes up to a consumer cloud. And it makes those experiences useless in an enterprise context for those employees. But the employees still want those experiences. So from a Pixel point of view, when we thought about AI, we wanted to make sure that we could push some of those great experiences to be on device. So whether that's closed captioning, right? Like there's this amazing video, and closed captioning is something that's incredibly important, but I think for a lot of us, we take for granted if you're not hearing impaired. A father made his first phone call to his son. Now, before that, he had to make video calls with his son. He had to schedule those calls. And he couldn't do that before the on-device processing and the AI capabilities of our closed captioning, which now can caption conversations across any application on the device, even the phone call. And that was extremely emotional and very powerful. And that's for us, AI is about accessing information, analyzing it, but also leveling the playing field and making sure that information is more accessible to the employees, but doing it in a way that's privacy preserving for the enterprise is super important. I think that's something that we're heavily invested in on the hardware.
One of the challenges, Brian, that people working in the IT space in public sector have been trying to solve for is doing exactly what Jason is talking about, but doing it at the edge in these remote military environments in the midst of a disaster as FEMA and other agencies respond. Could you talk about where we are as far as edge computing today?
Sure. Well, edge computing is not a new term. I think from a carrier standpoint, we put the M in front of it. So mobile edge computing, if you will, right? So moving it closer to the actual use case or actually end user having this device, right? So where we get excited about this, and I think you're going to see a transformation. And I was telling Jason about this when I was at CES, and I was showing some folks where you really see the power of AI. And I think it's unique with the mobile device like a Pixel 8, integrating with actual applications right there on the fly, and the AI is built in there. So it's not like if you use ChatGPT, which when you have to do more cut and paste, but actually have the AI integration in there is key. And where that plays in from a Verizon standpoint, as you mentioned, FEMA, we do a lot of work for the DoD, is it's extending those applications down to the edge, but also in conjunction is what we're starting to see more is as our network evolves, you'll hear the term network slicing. Where that gets exciting is actually segmenting the network to actually ingest and actually talk into things like Google Cloud services and might make it a better experience. And it doesn't have to be speed necessarily on the spectrum or on the cellular infrastructure. It's actually more in the latency or reducing the latency of that. So when we look at how we support those first responders through our frontline program, we tackle different ways, right? Obviously having robust connectivity, having disaster recovery, but more importantly, it's not just the gray days, gray skies, but also the blue skies, day-to-day operations and having an interaction. So I get really excited about some of the capabilities because everybody's like, all right, I have a mobile device. What's it going to do? It hasn't really changed in 5 years, right? But I can tell you this, the data consumption only increases. We're going to see this past year, we just had the final numbers. Mobile data traffic increased like 22% year over year. In this year's Super Bowl, the data traffic increased 30% in 2 years, right? So these devices, you're pumping a lot. You're only going to pump more, right? And if you don't know this already, and we've seen it with the pandemic, we're in a mobile-first world, right? And everything will be driven by this. And I think this is unique for Google, and I've said this now publicly. It's very interesting what they can do on the cloud piece and having the end device and the security and partnering AI in conjunction with Verizon on a 5G network. You're going to see some really cool things. You're starting to see it now, but in the next 18 to 24 months, there's some really neat things you're going to see.
30%, that's staggering. And like usher roller skating could probably only account for about 5% of that, right?
Yeah, and I think the other thing too to keep in mind why you're seeing that greater adoption, 70% of our base of customers in there had a 5G device. So I think that's the other thing too you're going to see in the federal government as well as SLED. We still have agencies that have not adopted 5G devices yet. And that's going to be application driven and as the contract refresh as well. But yeah.
What does that look like from like a cloud perspective? And let me give you a little bit of context. He used the word slicing there, Jason. Like, are we talking about private 5G networks? What does that look like? I don't know, in practice.
Yeah, I think like right now we're in active pilots with Verizon and other groups around private 5G, right? And the concept of creating these slices that allow for a more secure edge compute. Our cloud organization also has partnered with Verizon, again, to push more of the cloud out to the edge. And I think it is a collaboration between the hardware, the endpoint device, and making sure that that can support the capability of 5G edge, 5G slicing, but also with the carrier and the cloud organization to make sure that we are pushing our Google Cloud out to the edge through our carrier channels. So it's definitely I think the term was used earlier, a symphony. It's a concert of all of us coming together to make sure that that endpoint device, whether it's a Pixel phone, whether it's a Pixel tablet, can access the technology the right way and has been proven to be secure and also, to Brian's point, efficient, right? Reduce latency, increased access to that information through speed and reduce latency.
Yeah, on the slicing piece here, we publicly announced that we actually did a trial with a public safety partner, Axon, in Phoenix during the World Series, and actually using an Android-based device. We saw time to first frame, the ability to stream the frame from the body-worn camera, increase 50%, which is awesome, right? So it's not necessarily the speed on the network. Obviously, that's a factor, but it's more that latency and actually talking to the cloud environment, which is huge. I think where you're talking from a slicing standpoint, it's going to have two folds, right? So on the commercial network, you're going to have this capability where we're actually integrating APIs. We do this today with customized APNs and mobile private networks. We'll take that to another level. The other aspect is on the private wireless network. What this is actually a purpose-built network, right? In my 24 years, we did this occasionally, but now we have the ability for customers to actually build out a network betting on their needs, right, and their coverage needs, right? And it's not a knock against Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is going to be out there in a lot of cases in a portfolio of Verizon. We have a Wi-Fi practice as well. But we want that seamless experience, right? So one of the larger private wireless networks here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, just across the river, is the Virginia National Terminals, which we most recently deployed, where actually have a very large area. So when you look at private wireless on cellular, is the easiest way to think about is how do I give the greatest amount of bandwidth at the lowest cost with the least amount of infrastructure, right? So, think about what a cell site can handle compared to a Wi-Fi access point and how many users. And then depending something like a port, how many different use cases are there, right? Anything from scanning of cargo containers to autonomous vehicles. Each one of those applications or use cases is going to have different needs. And having a private wireless network in conjunction with slicing is going to give you those different functions. And this is where it gets even better, is because looking at something like this, having a device that can do things like mission critical push to talk, integrate, not just in a, lack of a better term, a private bubble, but also integrate with the commercial network when you go outside of that, right? And having that seamless experience and then hit commercial slicing as well. you want to have the same experience, right? And that's where I do believe on terms of private, you're going to see a renaissance as people, thank you for coming, get out of their home office, come to the office. We're going to see more in-building coverage requests. And, as you go in the garage, go up the elevator in the office, you don't want to drop the call. We know that's not a reality in a lot of cases today, but that will be a reality very soon.
Is that going to necessitate any changes inside of those public sector organizations? And maybe just like a little bit of context around that question. As I listen to Brian there, I think of the word agility. At the edge, you're going to be able to do things that weren't single use case. You're going to be able to do things that were multi-use case. But on the other end of things, inside of the public sector organization, on their enterprise networks, is that going to necessitate any change coming down the pike?
I don't think it requires. I mean, it's a cultural shift. I think, right? It's a mindset shift into, before you had a device that was for a single purpose, right? And each of those things served its purpose, whether that was, a scanning device, and that's what you used it for within that environment. And then you had, a smartphone, and that was used for, traditional email, calendar, phone calls, things of that nature. And maybe you had a tablet because you're doing a remote desktop. To really, in the future, we see it as being a converged device where it's not single purpose, but multi-purpose. And I think that's what we're trying to build now with a combination of hardware, software, cloud, and AI experiences out to the enterprise. So you have to, I think it's really probably a cultural shift in the mindset of thinking that this device only served one purpose to now saying, with AI, with cloud, with peripheral accessories, I can do more with just this one device than previous, where I had to do that maybe with 3 or 4 devices. And I think Brian's the traffic being up significantly too shows that, right? I think you'll see generationally people doing more on this device than they ever have. Mm-hmm. And that includes things like just even like doing their video calls, right? Like most of that's done on this device now because it's easier, right? You can offload compute from, traditional machines. Like this is becoming the singular device of choice.
Yeah. And just to add that it still holds true. There's not another, so anybody in IT, which are a lot of folks out there, there's not another device or service that you're going to issue to your employees that they use 99.9% every day and probably touch this device 100 times a day. Not their laptop, God forbid a firearm, not their ID badge, nothing else that you issue to your employee will be more than this device here. And the same thing goes for the citizens. How the citizens are going to interact with your particular agency for the services that you provide will come from mobile first, right? So when you start thinking on those level, everything should trickle down from there. We are not in that space because if you look at the spend and everything else, the large agencies and large budgets, right? How are you going to serve more people? You're not going to get all the resources you want. We all know that, right? But is there a way that we can start condensing down to mobile devices out here? I think that's where there's still a lot of uplift there. And having that mobile first strategy and everything falls behind that will go a long way. Because there's a lot of things you do in security that you couldn't do before in this device.
Let's stay on that for a moment too. Like, I think that one misconception out there is that more endpoints means less secure, but a lot of public sector organizations are kind of burdened with a lot of legacy technology. So when you layer on this new, mobile device ecosystem post-COVID, those are newer devices. Like, what's the resulting look at security there?
I think there's a perception that mobile is maybe not secure or can't be to the same standard, not enterprise grade. I think we've invested, that's an area we've invested significantly in on the Pixel side to make it enterprise and specifically public sector ready. So we've gone through FIPS 140-2, we're in, where do you have that? We're in final evaluation stages for 140-3. We go through NIAP certification. So we go through the appropriate certifications to make sure that the device is robust for this segment. But beyond that, it's a combination of making sure that I think it was mentioned earlier, zero trust, right? Making sure that you have all the right partners that are part of that equation, and that the platform is offering flexibility for those partners to secure and lock down the device, whether that's from a compliance point of view and making sure that you do e-discovery, logging messages, making sure that you have the proper EMM that can lock down, secure the device, to the enrollment process and making sure that you can force enroll in a device into a managed state, and that even if the employee were to try to remove it or do something, that it will auto re-enroll itself back in. Those are all the things that we've invested heavily in, and we continue to make that investment. So I think we're nibbling at that perception that mobile can't be as secure as traditional enterprise devices that we're used to the point where I think now we're saying is that in some cases mobile can be more secure with the right policies, the right governance, and the right partners.
Yeah. And I'll just add to that would be this particular device here. I saw TSA presenting earlier, right? Now my digital license is on this, right? I'm doing HIPAA information, my Johns Hopkins, my chart. There's everything on it. My financial information's on here. We got rid of hard tokens at Verizon, right? So the soft token that we generate to do two-factor authentication onto our PCs or laptops is actually generated from this particular device itself, right? So it's not just from a security, just on this device, and then the ability to actually integrate into the enterprise agency network and bypass the internet, where I can actually do this. I do this for postal service, where all the traffic goes through their two cloud-based data centers. So you can actually have, and one of the things on the Pixel device, having a customized ROM and be able to have that capabilities that you even, on top of zero trust, on top of biometric, but even isolating it from the public internet and actually integrating into your environment is pretty remarkable when you think about it.
Brian Schramsky, Associate Director, 5G Public Sector at Verizon. Jason Collishaw, Head of Enterprise and Government Sales, Devices and Services at Google. Gentlemen, thanks for being here. Thank you.
Thank you.